The popularity and effectiveness of the carnivore diet cannot be denied, but is it right for you? And if you do decide to start, it seems like there's so much information out there. Are you a purist, a generalist, or how about a ketovore? I'm going to do my best to get you started on the right foot coming up right now. If you're thinking about starting the carnivore diet, you are not alone. The popularity of this way of eating is growing like never before. From huge personalities like Joe Rogan to doctors, nutritionists, it seems like going meat is here to stay. And whether you have some extra pounds to lose or you're just shooting for overall health, the carnivore diet might be the tool that you use to help you achieve your goals. While there's a lot of different ways that I've heard people describe varying levels of the carnivore diet, I would break them down into three terms that I would call the purist, the generalist, and the ketovores. I'm not going to say that these are official terms. These are just how I've described them and how I would categorize them. Let's start with the purist. And these are the folks that I tip my hat to because this is by far the most restrictive form of the carnivore diet. And because it's so restrictive, it's really, really hard to stick to long term. So the people that are out there doing that, hats off to you because you have so much more discipline than I do. Honestly, to be a purist, you are pretty much eating meat, and that's it. And not just any meat, but we're talking about beef. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef. This group is going to eat various different cuts of beef, different steaks and different types, as well as different organ meats, but pretty much the one thing they all have in common is that they're coming from beef and beef alone. Truthfully, if it's not beef, they're not eating it. Yes, they're adding different seasonings, and of course, they're really adamant about using a lot of salt, which I agree with. You're getting rid of a lot of glycogen that holds on to water. You're shedding a lot of water weight, which means you're getting rid of a lot of trace minerals. So you do need to replenish those. But honestly, beef and salt, and that's it. Now, as I go through these various degrees of carnivore, you're going to hear me say that there's a lot of different reasons why people might use certain ones. And that's true, but there's obviously a lot of overlap, and everybody's reason is different for why they want to choose what they choose. But when it comes to the purist, most of the people that are following the purist way, and again, remember there's overlap, are those that are trying to overcome various health issues. These folks may be facing issues like metabolic disease or diabetes or high blood pressure or other inflammatory type conditions. And for these folks, the carnivore diet seems to be the most pure way of them to be able to get down to the root of all of those types of conditions. Now again, I want to point out, I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you that if you follow this way of eating that you're suddenly going to be cured of all these ailments. Obviously check with your doctor before starting any kind of diet program, but I do know that the amount of success rate for people that are facing these types of conditions is incredibly large for those that have decided to follow the carnivore diet. Another group of people that might try the purest way of doing the carnivore diet is people that have tried various different diets or ways of eating and really just have not had the success that they've wanted and have decided to kind of go extreme to see what results they can get. There are also a lot of people that are following this that may have had a lot of different reactions to various foods. Maybe they have food allergies, and this diet seems to be a way to get them back to square one so that when they start to reintroduce various foods, they can kind of start to see what they're sensitive to. So for those of you that might be looking at trying to identify certain allergies, whether it's gluten or lactose or something else, this might be a way for you to start making sure you get yourself back to square one and see what foods you might actually be sensitive to. All right, moving on to our next group, it's the generalists. This is likely where a lot of people are going to fall. Yes, you're pretty much still sticking with meat and you're sticking with zero carb or trying to keep that as close to zero carb as possible, but you're opening yourself up to a whole lot of other zero carb types of meats or foods. And for those of you that have followed my channel and saw that I did a 30-day carnivore experiment, this was pretty much the way that I followed that carnivore diet over that 30-day period. If you haven't seen any of those videos, I'll put a link to the playlist down below. Check them out after this video. As I said, generalists will typically have various types of meats, from beef, pork, more game type meats like elk and venison. You're going to see people go to like legs of lamb or lamb chops or things like that, as well as different types of fish. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, certain trout as well. You basically are just trying to keep things as zero carb as you can. Eggs are also a really big staple for those that are kind of following this generalist way of the carnivore diet. And honestly, eggs are awesome. They have so many great attributes to them, from proteins to fats. They really are a great addition to this way of eating if you decide to follow it. The one thing that I will caution you about when it comes to like eggs or cheeses and stuff, and I might get to those in just a minute, is that if you're someone that might be dealing with different types of food allergies, or you're wanting to kind of get to that really low level of inflammation, you might start keeping them out of the diet at first and then slowly add them back in and see if you have any kind of reaction. Now, as I said just a minute ago, when it comes to cheese, right, it's probably one that might be a little more of a boundary stretcher for those that are there. For myself, I know that I purposely tried to keep my cheese intake at a real minimum. Really, as I got a little bit more bored by eating the same thing over and over again, I might add a little bit of cheese every few days to one of my meals, or maybe to sprinkle over some scrambled eggs or something. Going back to the same thing I just said about eggs, you might want to keep it to a minimum, or even keep it out completely in the beginning, and then slowly add those things back in to see if you have intolerances to things like lactose or other things that might cause inflammation in your body, which is why most of us are trying to go into this way of eating to begin with. So the last group that I mentioned was the Ketovore, and I'm pretty sure I didn't make up this word by any stretch, but I don't hear it tossed around a whole lot. But to me, it describes those that are pretty much following the carnivore diet, but also kind of throw in some things from the ketogenic diet. These are folks that are eating carnivore pretty much most of the time, but they might be throwing in things like, avocados, or maybe they're cooking with like coconut oils, which obviously are more plant-derived, types of foods. Others might throw in some greens here and there every once in a while. Now, obviously, these are things that still could have been gathered easily by our ancestors, avocados or coconuts and so forth. But by and large, because they're not what you would consider a animal product, or also, the other big thing is that they're not zero carb. Yes, the net carbs on them are usually very low, but they're still not zero carb foods. That's why some people would call it a cheat, or not anywhere near what the real carnivore diet is all about, which is why, again, I say that I classify it as Ketovore. And I got into a really good discussion with somebody that was on one of the videos that I posted in regards to this. If we're being honest, right, somebody throwing in an avocado every once in a while, or actually even just having a salad every once in a while, there's a good chance that that's not what's actually giving them any kind of real health problems. It's the other stuff that we tend to not limit as we're going through our day-to-day eating, right? All of the keto sweeteners and the keto bars and the keto ice cream and all the other kind of stuff that we like to say that's approved for this way of eating because it's low or no sugar, or there's sugar alcohols or sugar substitutes. Those are the things that typically will get us into trouble, give us, gastrointestinal issues, or maybe slow or completely stop our weight loss. If I'm being completely honest, this Ketovore really is just a more strict version of the ketogenic diet than it is the carnivore diet. But because, depending on the various levels that you are, if you're someone who, like me, at various times would be all carnivore and then maybe have some avocado on something, or all carnivore and cook something in some coconut oil, by and large, you're still primarily following the carnivore diet. You just happen to be throwing in some things that are very much keto approved. A lot of us start these ways of eating because we want to experience things like weight loss, or lack of inflammation, or less inflammation, or mood stabilization, or things like that. And I will say this, regardless of what method you choose, I think you can have various degrees of this regardless of either one of the methods, whether it's Purist, Generalist, or Ketovore. So my encouragement to you would be to at least start somewhere. If that's starting with the Ketovore, do it for a month and then step down to a Generalist. Cut out some of those plant foods and see how you do. And if you notice your results there and you're feeling great, maybe consider cutting out even some of those, getting yourself closer and closer and closer to that purest way of doing the carnivore diet. Now look, there's a ton of information that we could have covered, and I don't want this to turn into an hour-long discourse on the carnivore diet. The bottom line is that as long as there's nothing health-wise preventing you from doing this, and you really want to see some really good results, I would encourage you to pick one and start and see how it goes. I do hope that you found the information that I've shared here today helpful, and at least given you enough information to get you at least pointed in the right direction, if not giving you the whole motivation to just pull the trigger and start. If you are ready to start the carnivore diet, I'd love to hear about it down below. Tell me which way you think you're going to start, and let's have a conversation. I'd love to encourage you because a lot of your comments encourage me. If you do enjoy content like this, I'd encourage you to click on subscribe, as well as like this video. Maybe share it out to somebody else that you know is struggling with their weight, or maybe you've heard them talk about the carnivore diet. If I can encourage others or be an encouragement to others, I'd love that. And liking this video helps get it shared out to a little bit broader of an audience. It really helps me out a ton, and it doesn't cost you anything. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.